Hello, this is Amy, and I am going live for the first time on my channel with a guest, and I am starting a new series called Buddy Banter. It's kind of a silly name, I like it, and I'm going to basically pseudo-monthly have a guest on my channel to talk about a topic of their choice. So this is the first ever Buddy Banter.
Yay!
And thank you very much, John, for making this amazing slide for me. And tell the people who you are, John.
For those who don't know, my name is John Webster. I'm a co-host on Here Be Dragons, and I also have my own YouTube channel with this person right here called John Webster Film. I'm absolutely flattered that I'm here for the first ever live stream with a guest, and especially for this inaugural episode. So
yes, it's actually all starting with you, John, because we were just going to do, first of all, it was going to be a recorded video, and then it was going to be live for the first time, and then I realized, wait, I could make a series out of this. Why would I stop at just talking to one friend about what they want to talk about? So I've already talked to, I've got like 5 or so people lined up just coming on, and they're mulling it over in their head what they want to talk about. And so, yeah, we're going to talk about what John wants to talk about, which is how gender stereotypes basically affect the media that we're driven to, what we like. And when he told me this topic, was elated. I was so excited about this. But before we get into that, I actually like to do my plugs up front, John, rather than in a mid-roll. So I'm going to do quick, let you know what's coming up for me, and then I will give the floor to John to let you know what's coming up on John Webster Film. BTP, Bleep That Patriarchy, y'all. December 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern. I finally have the time on Nessie's channel, Unspun Yarn. Check out the links in the description. Nessie deserves your subscription. I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to me that my amazing friend Nessie, who puts so much work into her channel, does not have more subs. Please hit that subscribe, hit that little bell so you know when Nessie is going live. She's doing some Arthurian legend stuff. She has an ongoing thing called Magical Menagerie where she looks at lore. She picks a mythical creature or just a creature. I was on to talk about monkeys. She has like a 3 or 4-parter on dragons. You guys really need to check out the Unspun Yarn. So once again, Bleep the Patriarchy, December 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have on, I am co-hosting it with Nessie. We're going to have on Ian Thomas Malone and Lo the Lynx, and we're going to talk about transphobia and turfism and why it's bad. So we're going to have a really good time there. Also, a shout out to my friend Yogi, who is in the chat. Through the Moon Door, he is going to go live this Sunday, December 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern. And he is going to have on Noef and Aegon, and they're going to talk about crackpot theories in A Song of Ice and Fire and why they're wrong, or why they might be right. So that's going to be exciting. So please check out Yogi's channel. Like I said, Through the Moon Door is 2 words, and you can go to my channel, and when you click on it, you'll see my friends' channels, and you can find any of their channels there. So please check that out. John, what do we have coming up on Jowif?
So we just finished our massive coverage of The Lord of the Rings. We went for 3 weeks talking about all 3 of those movies. So if anybody hasn't seen those streams yet, go check them out. What we have going on in the future, this coming Saturday at 7 p.m., because we're moving back to our regular time, we're going to be doing a stream on the Muppet Christmas Carol, which I watch every Christmas. So this is going to be a great time. And then the week after that, we'll be covering a new release, Wonder Woman 1984. So
yes, I am extremely excited for that. And if you are catching Kyle's stream today over at Fandom Media, he had on Helen in her Wonder Woman costume. So we have invited her on to talk about that, and we're very, very excited. So, hey, Steven. Please also check out Here Be Dragons. Link is also in the description. They stream every Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, next year, guys, I have a lot coming up, so I'm going to keep it short, but I'm continuing with my Song of Ice and Fire content, continuing with the Buddy Banter, continuing with his Dark Materials, and I'm going to branch out to The Witcher, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Please read that series if you haven't already. I've got some friends in the chat who are in a book club I started, and they are reading it along with me, so that's very excited. And hey, VM, good to see you, buddy. Awesome, so let's just go ahead and dive right in, John. Why did you pick this topic?
Because I just for years and years, I've been in love with a lot of movies that I say something to people, particularly. I was about to say other men, but you know what? No, I'll just say I tell anybody that I like those movies, and they look at me. They're like, "Really?" And those being movies like period romances, romantic musicals, or in the case of sorry, sorry about that. In the case of television, yeah, time traveling, romantic adventure stories such as Outlander.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because you did a great job adding some wonderful pictures for this stream. Yeah, you and I both love Outlander.
Yeah.
And I love, that's one of the things we're definitely going to talk about. So definitely, you know, these are the kinds of things that if I say I like, everyone goes, of course, because you're a girl, right? And then you say you like, you have to be like, you know, some men feel like they have to be like, for the time travel and like the fighting scenes, bro, because I'm cool and masculine.
You know, like I've even had to do that where I say, you should check out this show Outlander. It's not just the romance. It's got, you know, action, political intrigue, time travel.
Yeah.
And like, I shouldn't have to do that. Like, I mean, I get that there are people who will come to that show because that stuff interests them. It interests me too. Those are other aspects of the show that I really enjoy. But I want to be able to just say, it's so romantic. It's, you know, it'll make you feel things. And I can say that to women who I'm trying to enlist to the show, but then that also shows that not even all women are going to be interested in that, because I have tried that tact with Kelly to get her to watch Outlander, and she's like, yeah, that doesn't interest me.
We totally hit a brick wall when we tried to get Kelly to watch it. I know she would like it. It is still a historical drama. It is very interesting, and I've always been interested in this period of Scottish history, the Jacobite rebellions. And so I'm always like, I'm interested in it for the historical purposes and time traveling. But I mean, my gosh, John, like the main romance is what we really want to talk about is that we like things that are character driven, right?
Yeah,
that have real moments and real people.
I just watched that episode today to prep for this stream, and like, it's an hour episode of two characters falling deeply in love with each other over the course of that hour, and the build throughout the episode is so beautiful. And you know, there's so many things that work to make that happen, from the performances of the two lead actors to the cinematography to Bear McCreary's musical score, which develops into that gorgeous Claire and Jamie love theme by the end of the episode. And like, I like that you know, that's what pulls me to that. And yeah, it's...
And Anna, I'm so glad you brought this up, because we're going to also talk about action films as well. And, you know, oh, sorry about that. Because, you know, every time I would go on a date with a guy, I would know, if we're going to a movie, not to suggest a chick flick. I knew that it would have to be something like Fast and the Furious, which is something that I saw in theaters with a guy. And other than Tokyo Drift, was like, it's just dudes in cars. And that's not to say like down the Fast and Furious franchise, but it's trying to do something different than a lot of the movies that I like. And whereas I am, of course, Amy likes, you know, Outlander, or likes, you know, we both love Keira Knightley and her period pieces. But then, you know, for you to kind of have to like fight your way through it and like claw your way through liking that is surprising. Also, I do want to say, Sanrixian, please, her stuff is amazing, and please check out her Threadless. I am enjoying my new mug. Sorry, this is a little bit of an ad, but it's really good. I love the Valarian and the Targaryen stuff. That
everyone should promote Sanri as much as they possibly can. But yeah, you mentioned Fast and Furious. Like, I have zero interest in those films, which is not to say anything against them, because a lot of people enjoy them and they get something from them, and that's fine. But you know, an action movie with cars and explosions and stuff like that, that doesn't really do it for me. I sort of, and I don't want to, like, I'm treading the line here of not insulting anybody who likes those movies, but my interests lie in stories that have like rich character development and, and are telling a story that isn't over reliant on action. Yeah,
and I
but
like Tokyo Driftata. Seriously, like it's just that if John went to that, went to see the Fast and the Furious, they'd be like, of course, you're a dude, you love dudes in cars driving. And then if I go, it's like, ooh, she's a cool chick, she likes action movies. It's just such a
but there's
weird
no
kind of difference.
but there's no equivalent to a guy going to a period romance and saying, wow, you're really cool for doing that, dude. Everybody kind of gives you a weird look. Like, that doesn't,
and that's
make
exactly
sense.
kind of the double standard we want to show with this stream. So yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot going on there. And so we're talking a lot about, how you as a man and me as a woman are driven to like different media and kind of laughed at for liking certain media over others. But something that I wanted to talk about was also how we look at characters and what characters are valued. So here you go, Song of Ice and Fire, guys, you knew it was coming. Brienne, Arya, and Sansa are just a perfect example of this. You have Brienne, strong and martial, and you have Arya, this cool, badass assassin, and they are such beloved characters. And then Sansa, you kind of have to convince people to like her. She has a much more kind of feminine, soft power kind of, skills. And so just something I see in our beloved fandom is that, I can say I like Arya and I like Brienne, and everyone's like, of course you do. And then I say I like Sansa, right? And then I have to qualify why I like her. Because she's not, like, this idea of a strong woman usually traditionally means that she's doing something martial, something masculine, like with Mulan,
Yeah, it's something that I actually am guilty of as well, because when I first started reading the books, it was very easy for me to go after Sansa and kind of be like, shaking my head at her, which is insane, because in the books, she's a child. You shouldn't be that hard on someone who makes mistakes and when they're a young child. And her journey is different from the outward display of sort of action and heroism of Arya and Brienne. But in a lot of ways requires just as much, but not more savvy and courage. And I feel like even I didn't get that. It took seeing that character through the performance of Sophie Turner on Game of Thrones to actually fully appreciate Sansa. And now when I go back to read the books, I'm like, it's unbelievable the sort of way I viewed her back then versus the way I view her now.
I was very much, I actually would skip Sansa chapters. And I thought her storyline was boring. And I think, especially after I started doing a lot more work in feminist commentary and feminist scholarship, I realized that it was my own internalized misogyny, quite frankly. And I admit that very wholeheartedly, that I thought that, in order to be a strong woman, you have to pick up a sword. And that's basically saying that the kind of masculine version of strong is elevated above feminine virtues. And that is very anti-feminist way of thinking. And so I've started to kind of reorient myself and realize where I am giving characters a hard time for internalized misogyny reasons, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that yeah, it's I love the different the kind of in the chat the different skipping gods and chapters, that's illegal. The different opinions, you know, we have men and women in the chat saying they like Sansa, men and women in the chat say they don't like Sansa. So, you know, I'm not, you know, there's obviously you can have legitimate reasons for not liking Sansa, but I don't think I've ever heard anything against Arya or Brienne. If I have, it is just like I didn't like this one thing that they did. But I've never kind of seen the, you know, I conducted a poll. Follow me on Twitter, by the way, because I am Amy Poehler, Poller. I do a lot of polls, and I had a poll of for women in Song of Ice and Fire, which was I did Cersei, Dany, Sansa, and oh god, it's totally escaping me. I want to say Catelyn. Anyway, I did that and I asked which of them kind of get the most shit, basically. And Sansa won. And in the fandom is what I meant. In world, they all obviously experience sexist shit. But, you know, that's not to say that anyone in the fandom who doesn't like Sansa is automatically sexist. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. It's just that a lot of the arguments I've seen, you know, against her can sometimes lead sexist. But at the same time, I understand not being drawn to her storyline because the first time I read it, I wasn't. So yeah, I really do, I do understand. But the fact that we're so naturally drawn to people like characters like Brienne and Arya, I think is of note.
Yeah, I think there's some sort of naturally ingrained attitudes that we all kind of have because of how society, you know, paints these stories and characters. So we're sort of intrinsically drawn to these, you know, more active and characters, and we don't maybe appreciate Sansa's journey as much. And, you know, as we've said, this is not like, you know, this is not a broad brushstroke where we say this is why everybody doesn't like Sansa. There's, you know.
Yeah, and Ariana is an example actually of a more feminine character that gets some love from the fandom. So, you know, we're not here to make blanket statements. We're just kind of here to notice trends, basically, is what this stream is about to me. But, you know, John, something I also wanted to point out is I like anime. I grew up liking anime and manga, and there's something called shoujo and shonen. Shoujo means girly, basically girly manga, girly anime, like Fruits Basket or Ouran High School Host Club. There are all of these kinds of like romance-oriented girl falls in love kind of stories, and those are in Japan always advertised toward a female audience. And then you have shonen. You know, you've got your Dragon Ball Z, your Naruto, your One Piece, your Bleach. This is going to be more of geared toward there's fighting. It's all manly men. All the advertisement is about leading up to the battle, and it's always advertised toward a male audience. And so when I was growing up, I would be reading you could get a magazine, and there's one called Shonen Jump, and it was specifically just shonen manga. And I would buy that and be like, I don't like this shoujo girly manga about love and stuff because I'm a cool girl, right? So it definitely affected me. Yeah. And you had this is obviously a Japanese example. I wanted to be a little bit more international in adding these examples because I personally, the way that I consume media was affected by the way that Japan markets its anime.
Yeah, and even though I'm not familiar with those, I'll sort of take a note from the anime that I have seen, which is predominantly the films of Hayao Miyazaki, which, you know, you have something, you know, you have stuff like Princess Mononoke, which, interestingly, I noticed that a lot of the American advertising for that focus around the male character when the movie is called when the movie is called Princess Mononoke. So it's like but that's just interesting to note how things are marketed. You want to go after that male audience, but then you also have another film called Spirited Away, which has a you know, front and center a female protagonist, and I actually think that's my favorite of the films. But I hear that being sort of widely accepted as, you know, people of all genders tend to like that movie, and I wonder if that's because all of those films have a very, fantasy trapping, the fantasy trappings, and they're anime. So I think that somehow makes it permissible for for the men to say, yeah, I love that movie, because it's not veering over, it's not it's not predominantly a romantic story. It's more fantasy adventure.
Yeah, and we also have you don't know if you've seen this, Kiki's Delivery Service is about a young little witch flying around. So I do like those kinds of hey Chrissy. I really do like those movies in particular. And Princess Mononoke is actually my favorite. And I love you, Yogi, but I gotta disagree. Princess Mononoke, like we are introduced to Ashitaka first off. We follow him. The camera follows him. But the main kind of point and the main kind of like the magic comes from Princess Mononoke's connection with the wolves. And I think that in the end, like with Pirates of the Caribbean, Keira Knightley being the main character, even though everyone thinks it's Jack Sparrow, I think that Princess Mononoke, it is aptly called that, because I do think that she drives the magic and the ultimately kind of the kind of pro nature message of the movie does not come from Prince Ashitaka. It comes from Princess Mononoke.
And that's sort of a thing that's ingrained in the movie. Not to, Miyazaki is telling the story he wants to tell. I'm not saying that he's not, but I'm sure it's always in the mind of filmmakers that better have an aggressive male hero standing side by side with them, so that we can push this to the people who don't want to just say, I'm watching this movie with this amazing female protagonist. No, yeah, the movie's named after her, but the main person is this guy Ashitaka. It just kind of shows that you need to use that to kind of get the hooks in certain audience members. And
yeah,
and that's what we're kind of trying to sway people against that. It's okay as a guy to go ahead and say, I love this thing that's driven by a female protagonist, and regardless of what the genre is.
Yeah. So, and a good example of that is something we did a stream on with John B, aka Bronx Staries, which is Little Women. That's very much a female driven. It follows the girls and it follows their mother. And that luckily did, if I remember right, did pretty well and was pretty critically acclaimed. And I went to see it with my mom, and we had a great time. And we love the female driven stories. And, I love when I hear men that say that they went to see Little Women in theaters and loved it. It's one of my favorite things in the world.
I'm very happy to say that was the last film that I saw in the before times.
That was me too. Same here. That's the last time I went to the movie theaters, was to see that.
And it was my favorite film of 2019. And I like the fact that I didn't even hesitate in saying that when I saw the film. That is not something that I would have felt comfortable doing, say 10, 15 years ago. I would have kept it on the down low and, loved the movie, but maybe, only watched it when, say, I was home alone and not said to other people, oh my God, you got to see this. I would have just praised it, in secret, and like, I would have said to Amy, I'd be like, hey, Amy, I really like this movie. You'd like it. But yeah, and which kind of, we might as well go back to sort of the early stages of sort of my evolution, as we'll call, because that has roots back probably in, I want to say, like I said, about 15 years ago or so. Is that fine with you? No, I was just asking if we can, if I can start talking about that, or if you wanted to talk about.
I'm sorry. Start talking about what you cut out for me just for like a second.
I just thought we could jump back about 15 years to when my journey kind of started on this sort of self-discovery and
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And
Because I
actually, there was one question I wanted to ask you, Jay, though,
yeah, go ahead.
about this time is how similar or different is this feeling of liking something and kind of having to make excuses for it or be apologetic about it? How similar is that to how it feels sometimes to be a nerd, you know, and be like, oh no, I like when I liked anime, I constantly had to kind of make up reasons why to kind of justify myself.
Yeah, I mean, that journey for me started a lot earlier. So it's like a whole different kind of world where when I was in school, like, you could talk about nerdy things, or if you were talking to people who sort of got you. But yeah, you didn't, wasn't something to brag about and come out and say, like, I'm a nerd or I'm a geek. Not like today. Um, but it's still different because it's like I spoke to other guys who were also, geeky. Um, Whereas there was no equivalent for talking to someone about period romances or, things of that nature. It just, aside from my mom, literally, which, her being sort of my movie partner as I grew up, she was, the person I was able to let in on, the secret, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I did want to say that, like, this didn't just start one day where I'm like, I love, like, we're going to get to it eventually. Keira Knightley period romance films. The groundwork for that was laid much earlier, where all the movies that I watched, I responded to the more emotional elements and even romantic elements. I liked musicals going back a few years before that, and it was always romantic musicals, but I didn't realize that at the time. Yeah, Moulin Rouge. It's like there's a reason why I respond to Moulin Rouge more than, say, Chicago. And that's because Moulin Rouge has this gorgeous, beautiful love story. And that is evident in all the music they sing with that passion that comes out. And I just remember we joke about the John sigh. That that was in abundance when I saw Moulin Rouge for the first time. And same thing with like Phantom of the Opera, which is very romantic, which is why I love that. And but even stuff like Lord of the Rings, which is not, romantic per se, depending on how you look at it, that is. But the emotions that the characters display, they wear their hearts on their sleeves. And I've always actually wondered about that because there is stuff in those films, from the way that the hobbits relate to one another to the emotion that goes on between Aragorn and Boromir during that, fateful scene at the end of Fellowship of the Ring, that, like, those are as emotional as you can get. But it's because it's within the framework of a fantasy action adventure epic that guys who get emotional over that stuff don't even think twice. They're like, this is so good. But like, why is that different from feeling those same feelings while watching Elizabeth and Darcy from Pride and Prejudice finally, put us, move forward from all their baggage and actually be honest about their feelings for one another. And
Yeah,
like,
it feels like it has to be kind of the emotional in order to kind of advertisers in Hollywood, in order to get a male audience, they feel like they kind of have to hide the emotion within, in between scenes of fighting.
yeah,
And, kind of more more conflict that is not emotional, but rather is, literally like martial. Um, you know,
yeah,
and like we were talking about before the stream, we both like the extended versions of the films because they have those character moments that are taken out to shorten it for the theatrical version.
And
They're not
think
going to
about
take out battles for
and
the obviously.
just think about that. Think about how much fans revere the extended versions of those films. And why? Because the added material is character development. There's no added action scenes.
Yeah.
It's all character development that's enriching those human relationships, or elven relationships, or dwarven, but you know what I mean? And like, so if you cherish that stuff, those bonds between characters, what's the difference between Mary saying to Pippin, you know, are you going to leave me? And Pippin saying, no, Mary, I'm going to look after you. What's the difference between that and Darcy saying, I love you. I never wish to be parted from you. It's, you know, one is the, you know, close bonds of friendship, and the other, but also very open to, you know, depending on how you look at the story and the characters, you could interpret that as romantic as well. But also, you know, then over in Pride and Prejudice, that's absolutely romantic, but the underlying emotions are the same. It's that same kind of, you know, asking the audience to open up your heart and feel something in this moment. So why is one considered manly?
Yeah.
And the other, it's like you don't want
Is
to touch
girly.
with a 10-foot pole. Yeah.
And we think about it, we have the term, you say chick flick. I've never heard dude flick. I mean, there's action movies, but like chick flick is often used pejoratively as well. And what's interesting is exactly what you're talking about, which is men liking something that would be considered maybe more girly actually becomes a counterculture, like the bronies, guys who like My Little Pony. Like, why does it have to become this radical movement? Right? That has its own, you know, like in the dark recesses of the internet.
Yeah, it shouldn't. You know, the fact that, like, here's the thing, like, this was still a deep, dark secret. Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, it makes sense.
Oh God, you guys are killing me in the chat. I love you so much. Thank you everyone for coming.
It's the natural place to go. It really is. But like, this was still to a certain degree my sort of little secret until I met all of you guys in this community, and particularly on our Slack group. And before that, I don't know that I shared this sort of beyond my mom. I still don't talk about it with my dad. He obviously, I'm sure he's picked up on the fact that some of the movies that I turn on are, you know, romantic period dramas, or, you know, or romantic anything. Because I watch Outlander, like, out in the open, and, you know, and like, if he walks in the room, it's like, okay,
there
fine.
it is.
There it is. Yeah, which, you know, is, I also want to talk about that, because I don't want it to sound like I'm, you know, getting on my dad or either of my parents, because they both.
This is now a Why Our Parents Suck stream, everyone.
Yeah.
Tell me why your parents suck in the chat.
but no, here's the thing. They both sort of have these societal norms, you know, sort of embedded in them, as we all kind of do. And, you know, were a couple instances of, like, you know, going back to talking about Moulin Rouge. My mom and I have been movie buddies since way back when. She loves Moulin Rouge. She knows I love Moulin Rouge. We've watched it. But I remember one occasion, like years and years back, when I was watching it, like in the middle of the day, when I think it was like the weekend or something, but there were people coming over to the house to do, like, you know, work on something, like construction or something. And she was like, you probably want to turn this off, you know, before they come over. And I'm thinking, why? I like this movie. What do you want me to turn on? An action movie? Will that be okay? Yeah, I'm sure he does.
You know, and what's interesting, J-Dubs, is and this is also just for those in the chat, more about me, because I love talking about myself. even though this is buddy banter. I mean, I'm bantering along with my buddy, but I grew up actually everyone called me a tomboy. I liked to keep my hair shorter. I didn't like to wear dresses. And now I'm wearing a dress, and I have, by the way, Christmas extra. I did the opposite Christmas nails that I had for my last video, where it was green with red ornaments. I have grown into accepting feminine things that I like because I like them. And before, like I didn't own a single clothing, piece of clothing that was pink. I just wanted to deny the feminine side of myself. Growing up, I was very much a tomboy, and so, you've had this kind of moment of self-realization of, you know what, I'm gonna like things that are romantic, and I have had to have this self-realization of it's okay to like these movies for me, even though I grew up a tomboy. And that actually what I was doing was kind of rejecting, a certain part of me. And it makes me happy to paint my nails. It makes me happy to wear dresses. And at the same time, though, I also like pants. They're really comfortable, right? Like you can be who you want to be and not have to apologize for it. And I think that's really a lot what this stream is about, is that you and I both are still, at least I am, I don't want to speak for you, John, but still kind of struggling here and there with that kind of knee-jerk reaction to make excuses and apologies for the things that we like.
Yeah, it's something that I think I still probably struggle with to a certain degree, especially in the quote unquote real world. It's one thing to type stuff out in a chat group. And it's another thing to be sort of brave enough to express yourself in the quote unquote real world, which is why I think I've been pushing myself so much to do like online streams and stuff, because you'd think someone as shy as I, historically have been, you wouldn't want to sit in front of a camera and broadcast to people over the internet about personal things. But I've found that the more I do that, the freer I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the many reasons I was so glad that you suggested this topic. And, I've been talking to other buddies I want to have on to banter with. And they have a wide range of topics. And a couple of them are quite personal. And that's why I was really glad that our very first, buddy banter is something that's personal, because I really think that having these conversations a little bit more out there. I mean, we're literally live on YouTube. Hello, everyone, right? We are talking it into people's out of people's laptops and computers, phones, whatever, and we're telling them about ourselves. And there's something really powerful about that, and that's what I've really enjoyed with starting my channel, is that I can really put myself out there. I mean, I literally started a blog and a channel about Chinese stuff in Western fantasy, and I'm so surprised that this many people listen to me talk about it. You started a channel about movies, and you have, especially lately, by the way, amazing job on getting a lot more clicks. We're so excited. Thank you, everyone, for supporting John Webster Film. Now you have a co-host. Like, you're going big time. Isn't that just amazing when you can put yourself out there and people respond?
It's started to be a tiny bit frightening, because I just, there's no other way to put it. It's just frightening. Like, I'm glad I'm doing it, and it makes me feel good to do it. But I also worry about where it goes from here, and if there's too many people watching for my comfort level. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I'm having a blast, but yeah, and also the fact that, like, I'm not shy about all the stuff that I'm talking about over on that channel. We have a whole section of the main page that's called Nights of Kira, which is all our Kira nightly streams, which is totally embracing my love of period romances, which, I've actually told this story before on the Pride and Prejudice stream, but do you mind if I sort of talk about my experience of actually going to see that film?
Absolutely. In fact, I insist.
It really was sort of the gateway drug, so to speak. Because even though I was a fan of, romantic elements and stories, like, as we talked about Moulin Rouge.
I'm also going to pop this just back up there.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah.
it's such great.
Like, obviously,
And
I'm like, okay, I'll take one moment to like be counterproductive to my argument, but like, isn't she just absolutely gorgeous right there?
I'm sorry, I got to plug our Knights of Kira Twitter. We also have an Instagram. Look, we love Kira and we're not afraid to talk about it. And she is the period piece queen. And, people have seen her in, Pirates in the Caribbean, and such, but there's so much more that she does that is definitely worth your time.
And full disclosure, like, the whole reason why I actually went to go see Pride and Prejudice first and foremost, I was not as enlightened as I, like to think I later became. Like, I had a crush on her. So, that was like from seeing Pirates of the Caribbean, then I went to go see King Arthur. And so when this movie came out, I was kind of like looking for an excuse to go see it because, once again, straight male, not supposed to go see a Jane Austen movie. And it so happened that it was my mom's birthday, and I, thought I can take her out, to the movies for her birthday. And hey, it gives me an excuse to go see this. So much the better. Yeah, I'm a terrible person. My mom's birthday present was completely self-serving. But I went to go see it, and like, what amazed me and slightly terrified me was about halfway through the movie, I started to realize that I was hoping against hope that Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy were going to get together. Which, at the time was fairly disconcerting. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with them?
Yeah, why am I so, yeah. And,
Yeah.
the shipping culture too. I love it when it's dudes shipping. It's just, I want them to get together. And I really appreciate that, because men have been told that they should like certain aspects of it, and if it happens to have romance, then okay, fine. But for you to, go knowing that it's going to be mostly about romance and like it anyway is, I think, really speaks to, here you go, here's your feminist medal, John. But it really does, this is one of the many reasons we're friends, but it really does speak to your open-mindedness about giving something a shot and seeing if you like it instead of prejudging it.
But that's what's so great about the Pride and Prejudice experience, is like, that process that transformation was happening throughout actually sitting there and watching the movie. Yes, I know, Leaf. I'm going to get to it. I swear.
Also, Jack is canon. Just saying.
But
also, I think, John, another movie we love that we have talked about on John Webster Film was also The Duchess, which I believe, is this the movie you said that you went to for Keira Knightley?
See, this is the thing. This is where I said, because with Pride and Prejudice, I had the excuse of taking my mom for her birthday. Then Atonement followed right after that. And that was, first of all, the reason why I was excited for Atonement was because it was going to be Joe Wright, the director, and Keira Knightley again. And so I was immediately looking forward to that, because I was coming off this high of having fallen in love with Pride and Prejudice. And I bought the book that it was based off of, the soundtrack, in like the months leading up to this. You would have thought this was and even this is like a sort of sexist thing that I'm saying right now, but you would have thought that it was something like Lord of the Rings, with how much I was hyped up about it. And like, I love that. But the point being, that was a big like Oscar movie. So the awards machine was all hyped up. So that gave me like excuse to go see that film, because I was going to see all the awards contenders. The Duchess was not like one of the, big players at the awards, though it did get, I think, a couple nominations. And it came out before the season really got going. So the whole reason why I was going to see The Duchess was it was a Keira Knightley movie, and I just said, screw it, I'm a fanboy.
Yeah.
I love, Keira Knightley's movies, particularly period romances. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to see it, not taking anybody.
Just enjoy
I'm
yourself.
I'm gonna feel perfectly fine going up to that ticket counter and saying one for the Duchess,
One for the
and
Duchess.
and sitting down in that theater seat and enjoying the heck out of myself. And I did. I loved the movie, and yeah, that was the point where I think I started to say, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm gonna like what I like.
And for those of you that have seen our stream on the Duchess, you'll know that that is my favorite Keira Knightley movie of all time. So I'm always here to talk about it. Also, Alicia girl, I'm so glad you brought up Supernatural, and I don't think John has seen this, so I'm just going to say, like, just the TLDR of how I feel is Supernatural. I've watched all 15 seasons. I love that show, and what's interesting about the Supernatural fandom is that it is very women heavy, but there are some men in there, straight cis men, that are like so into it. They're shipping Castiel, who's an angel, sometimes with Dean, who's one of the main characters. Like, I mean, just really committed male fans, and it's really great to see. And that's one of the fandoms that I'm really proud to be a part of. Supernatural fandom can get a little nuts, don't at me. But
See what
the men in it are really committed to the not just the killing, dudes driving around the country killing monsters. They also care about the human stories of these two brothers who haven't gotten to have a normal life because they have to try and save the world like 5 times.
See, the only thing that intimidates me about that is you say 15 seasons, and I'm like, when will I have time for that? But
I luckily, when I started watching, there were only 4 seasons out, so I was watching it as it aired. Let's put it this way: of all the Supernatural shows that I like, and trust me, I like a lot of them, I would rather you watch Charmed first, because that changed my life. I grew up watching Charmed. It taught me a lot about feminism, and that they were really strong women as far as magic, but they also had their really intimate and moments of just breaking down, just having way too much going on. And there was all of this, like with Buffy, a lot is put on these female characters, and sometimes it's too much. One of my favorite episodes, actually my favorite episode of Buffy, is, I guess, spoiler alert, it's like 20 years old. Please watch it.
Yeah,
Content creepers is what I call them. You know how I feel about that, John. But there's an episode where Buffy is dead, and they bring her back, and she breaks down and says, I was free when I was dead, and now I'm back in the churn, as they say in The Expanse, the churn of this having to be the chosen one, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a show that sort of broke out of the mold of its genre,
I'm sorry, but yeah, the ending, not great. You can stop at season 14. I'll let you do that, John.
Yeah, because I'm usually on board with everybody else's critiques of endings. But Buffy constantly sort of broke out of that mold of, it had the trappings of its genre, but then it would have really real moments.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
and my favorite character. I love Buffy, but Willow is my favorite character, and her struggle with being shy, and also her struggle with her sexuality. Really, I didn't know at the time because I was still in the closet, but really made me, now doing rewatches, I now see another reason that Willow is my favorite character is because she is growing up queer, and that's just awkward. It just is. And when you finally, in the season where she finally comes out and accepts herself, you see how much happier she is. And it was a little bit contributed to my coming out as bi about 5 years ago, and only proudly bi as of like 2 years ago. It's been a journey, and it will continue. And this is an excellent point, Micah. Thank you for bringing this up. Also, I'm sorry, this is just queer corner with Amy. There's also this kind of phenomena of also burying queer characters. Like, a lot of people say that about Supernatural, that Castiel said he loved Dean, but he meant love, And I actually see that too. And there have been some great YouTubers who have made videos about burying the gay. And even also liking queer cinema as well can also be something that, you did a stream on Carol as well, right?
Yeah, which is sort of remarkable in the sense that, not to say it hasn't, like, it doesn't have a perfect ending for its characters. I mean, because after all, it takes place in what, the 50s? I think there's no way to have a completely happy ending for those characters, but it ends on a more positive note than I think most most gay characters are allowed in sort of historical films or even modern films. So it feels kind of revolutionary in that way when it shouldn't. Um, but yeah, and Carol's another thing where you probably wouldn't expect, a guy, particularly a straight guy, to go on and on about how much they loved it. But that also was, I want to hold back on saying that it was my absolute favorite film of 2015, because 2015 was an amazing year.
It was a great year as a film.
Yeah.
Actually, 2015 is.
But it's pretty darn close up there.
Yeah. I forget. We did our favorite. I remember one time when we were chatting, we did our favorite films of so many years, and I think 2015 was the hardest for me, if I remember correctly. I forgot what I ended up coming up with. I'd have to look it up. Is Mad Max 2015? Fury Road?
Yeah, you had Mad Max, you had Force Awakens, you had The Hateful Eight, Brooklyn. I'm sure there were some other ones. It's just like Ex Machina, I think. Yeah, Ex Machina was that year.
And do please check out John on John Webster Film. Once again, links in the description. He has a great stream. I believe he did that with Emma, right? Archmaester Emma.
On Carol, yeah.
Yes. So please check that out. That stream does not have near enough views. It deserves way more views.
Which, if you want to,
stream just hit 1,000. So that was my first time being on John Webster Film. I'm sorry, it's Joe. Yep. It'll always be Joe. It was my first time being a co-host, and so thank you everyone who has watched that. I just had a blast, and I think we just keep getting better and better each stream we do.
I'm really proud of that got up to 1,000, just because that was our first stream together, and and Mad Max Fury Road is just a great movie. I wanted to mention, Alicia is mentioning The 100 and the character of Lexa. Like, that was an egregious mistake, and they just fell into the trap of doing that same sort of conventional thing, which is, you have your two female characters fall in love, and then one of them's got to die. That was a mistake for so many reasons, and not just because it's that same old stereotype, but because Lexa was an amazing character. I think that show definitely lost something after Lexa left, which, you can see the sort of fruit that it delivered to Fear the Walking Dead, which got to bring on Alicia Debnam Carey, who, especially in the later seasons of that show, has become like a powerhouse. So, like, why would you even think about getting rid of her from your show? And
I love people in the chat that are not just mentioning shows or movies that have done wrong by their queer characters, but also shows and movies that have done right by them. And I think Buffy is a kind of an earlier example of doing right with Willow. Of she even gets a girlfriend later. But I will say, mute for like 30 seconds, because I'm going to give spoilers for the last season of Supernatural. I know it's only been out for a month, so mute right now. Okay, so Castiel finally says, "I love you, Dean," and then literally dies. Literally the second after he says, "I love you." Literally killing the gay. Okay, go ahead, John. You're good. You can put that back on. You're good. All right, we're back, people. I know that just came out, so that is actually a spoiler. I have about like a 5-year-ish. If it's been out more than 5 years, then I don't consider it a spoiler. But I get that this is only like a month ago. So,
well, you said mute for 30 seconds. I'm like, that won't help me. I need to take my headphones off.
I meant mute your audio, like the sound. What I'm saying. Anyway, if I spoiled anyone, I'm sorry. Please still like and subscribe. Oh yeah, all the YouTube things. By the way, I can never get this right. in the corner, you will see this little avatar that I have right here, which is a beautiful rendition of me by Michael Klarfeld. Please hit that and subscribe, because I'm going to have many more of these awesome conversations with buddies. And I also, like I said, Here Be Dragons, Unspun Yarn, John Webster film. They all seriously deserve your subscribe. Yes, that is true. Buffy had the gays, but then also killed the gays. So that's a very good point, Anna. Sadly.
Yeah, sadly. And, you know, maybe it's funny how sort of perspective changed. My sort of look on it back then was because, you know, I didn't have sort of the experience of the gay audience watching the show. I was just looking through the lens of, you know, this is another TV show that I love, so I wasn't thinking about those issues. But to me, it was just Joss being classic Joss and crushing our hearts after raising our spirits. But that's another sign of that trend, which is unfortunate. But I still like, though, that there were many seasons of a great, wonderful relationship that we got to see on screen, and it was a joy to watch. You felt for those characters through their highs and their lows, and you know, it broke your heart at several turns, and then made you happy with giddiness at others. So
it's kind of like We Can't Have Nice Things. It's kind of like
a
Buffy thing. But I know Yogi in the chat will agree with us when we say we love Titanic. That is definitely another thing that we want to talk about, because Yogi was joking earlier that you know, men have to be like, oh, you know, like the action of the sinking of the ship is why I like Titanic, when it obviously centers around Rose.
It sucked until they hit the iceberg.
But it really centers around Jack and Rose and their love. And what makes it tragic that the ship sinks is obviously because people die, and not to mention specifically those who had third-class tickets died the most. So it's also tragic that it's usually the poor people who you know, die in these tragedies. That's definitely tragic. But we have this love story, and what makes it even more tragic for us as an audience of that movie is that we see two people finally kind of find someone who cares for them genuinely, because she is being married off to a guy for money, and she actually then falls in love with a pauper, right? Classic story. And yet they are literally torn apart by this ship as the ship tears apart.
The important thing is, like, the last half of that movie does not work if you don't love Jack and Rose and aren't in love with their love. It just doesn't. Like, you're hanging on every beat of that, you know, that second half, because you are hoping against hope that they're going to make it. So anybody who, you know, says that they are not into the romance stuff in the first half, like, you know, you have to wonder if you're saying that to to impress your bros. It's just, you know, that's probably one of the earlier examples of me loving a movie because of romance, even when I didn't realize that was why I loved it. But, you know, I bought that soundtrack, and, you know, what were the tracks I was listening over and over to? Like, you know, Rose, which is when, you know, they're on, you know, the front of the ship, you know, that picture that you just showed, and also, you know, the portrait, which is, you know, that moment when Jack is drawing Rose, which, you know, I'm probably going to draw some snickers by saying, you know, some guys saying, you just like it because Kate Winslet is naked in the scene. And it's like, which, you know,
yes,
I'm not gonna lie.
Both can be true.
But the thing is, like, that scene is like, your heart is pounding during that scene. Just as Rose says, her heart was pounding the whole time. So is the audience, you know, because it's this incredibly intimate moment between these characters, and just the way it shows Jack, you know, drawing the portrait, and the music, which is a piano piece, which, by the way, you knew I was going to geek out on film scores at least once during this. James Horner wrote that piece as like a a sort of a mock-up of the main romantic theme, and he labeled it sketch, which just means it's a musical sketch. But but James Cameron thought that it was meant to go in the sketching scene.
Yeah.
So he placed it over that and was like, oh my God, this is perfect. And James Horner was like, no, I have this whole other like finalized piece
Yeah.
is going to go there. And he's like, nope, this is perfect. Leave it as is. And, you know, and it's perfect. It is. And it just has your heart racing as you're watching this beautiful scene. And like, that's the stuff from Titanic that I think about, and, you know, and that love between those two characters. And then that's what makes all the tragedy so tragic, you know. So yeah.
And talking about the, you know, the social commentary of the movie too, which I appreciate. We see the difference in Rose being at this fuddy-duddy event and in first class, and she's not having a good time, and then she's down below in third class and just having one hell of a time, drinking, dancing, you know, and it really just kind of shows that the genuineness of people that don't have much, and the fakeness of those that have a lot. And so it was, I think, obviously the sex is there and it's hot, and don't get me started on the car scene.
Which like, and but, like Aaron
it's
even
two
said,
people that really care about each other, and that's what makes it impactful.
And Aaron even said, like, as far as Outlander goes, like, yes, that show is super steamy. Not going to say that it isn't. But it is also the underlying emotions, which adds to that. You know, there's a reason why, you know, jumping over to Outlander for a second, there's a reason why those scenes between Claire and Jamie are so, you know, for lack of a better term, hot, is because, like, you feel their love for one another. You feel that passion there. And yeah, I'm very happy to help you, Aaron. And, you know, and that's what makes it work. And that's also like when those characters are separated, you feel that longing that they have for one another. And
absolutely,
like, and so yeah, the fact that stuff is what appeals to me, and, you know, as far as that show goes, and not, oh my God, look, we got the Battle of Culloden coming up.
Yeah.
You know, that's not really what does it. Naturally, I was blown away by the way they handled that, because they didn't just have like a big action scene for the Battle of Culloden. It was like little bits in flashback while you were dealing with sort of what Jamie is emotionally going through on the battlefield. And that's what makes it work, because it's focused on character.
Yeah. And, you know, something else that we love, this is also a stream about the stuff that we love, right? The media that we like. Disney princess movies. I mean,
oh my God. Like I've never
so
hesitated.
glad that you and I can just gush about The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, and, you know, whatever we want to. I mean, Mulan is obviously my favorite for various reasons, but most
every time I've bought a Disney Blu-ray at Best Buy, it never fails. The cashier will ask me, "What's your favorite Disney movie?" And whether it's a girl or a guy, I usually get either Aladdin or The Lion King. And I always say Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, you do.
Because it's so freaking romantic, and just like that ballroom scene, how can you, like, you can't beat that. And just the excitement for both of those characters, and the music. I mean, God, the songs, you know, Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, God bless both of them, and rest in peace, Howard Ashman, who died, I believe, around the time of, I think shortly before this film, Beauty and the Beast, came out. Like pure geniuses, and they just, yeah. And it's funny because we're talking about a couple of these, you know, different things: Titanic, Outlander, now Beauty and the Beast. All of these stories also have like the classic representation of toxic masculinity within them, because
Yeah, what you've got Gaston.
You've got Gaston, you've got Blackjack in Outlander.
Yes.
And
Titanic, you've got the
Titanic,
the bad guy.
Billy Zane,
Yeah.
his character, who is like the worst.
Just the freaking worst.
He's awful.
And also, just going back to Titanic just for 1 second, I did also want to say, My Heart Will Go On is the #1 karaoke song in East Asia. And every time I was in Beijing and I was in doing karaoke with my friends, they always had me sing My Heart Will Go On every single time. It will be different groups of Chinese friends too. And it's like, they love when Americans sing that song. And it's like it, even though it was, the 90s, it's like it was released yesterday. And when you go do karaoke in China,
and can I make,
funny.
I'm going to make a confession right here and say, like, I have never been on the hate train for My Heart Will Go On. Like, because it's like the natural extension of the end of that film. You're on the high of seeing Jack and Rose reunited in, whatever that is, at the end of the film. And then it goes right into the song, and my heart just, no pun intended, it just melts. But yeah, and I do want to say, like, Reflective Rambling just said, sorry to say I'm on the Lion King train. Like, that's great. I freaking love that. This is not to say, like, everybody should embrace romance. But, like, the point is to allow you to, if that's your preference, if that's your love, embrace that regardless of what your sex is, or your gender,
Yeah, or however you identify.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that, Reflective, like Lion King. I like Lion King too. Like, that's exactly what this stream is about, is that, yes, thank you, AK. Like, these are all opinions, but not liking Celine Dion is wrong. I'm sorry. I think have a wrong opinion and still be my friends. I have some friends that don't like My Heart Will Go On.
You know what? I can't believe I'm going to do this, but, like, let's carry this forward to the next logical place, which is on a completely different level. You have encouraged me to be open with certain other musical tastes that I would typically be like, oh God, don't tell anybody. And here I am. I'm on a stream talking about it. Like, you've taught me to embrace sort of my, and you can, every person can speculate on what the root of this comes from. But when I was a teenager, I actually really liked Britney Spears. And, like, you were like, own that, don't be shy about that. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I just talked about it on the Slack, and now I'm for some reason talking about it on the stream.
But we haven't even, and I didn't even think about music. We were so focused on movies and TV. I love sending you sending me Ariana Grande stuff.
Yeah.
I like pop,
Like, I sent you the YouTube link for the Netflix special that's out now, and you didn't even know about it. I'm like, I'm so glad now that I that we can share that, and that you've actually gotten me into her music, which is so weird because I actually really like her stuff. I bought a couple CDs now. Every
single Ariana Grande song is a bop. I don't know how she does it.
And I saw Aaron just mentioned Frozen. Yeah, I love Frozen with all of my heart. Let It Go. I never pass up an opportunity to post a Let It Go GIF in the Slack group. And here's the thing, like, that's a movie that centers on two princesses, which again, it goes to this idea of, what guys should be into. That's probably not a Disney movie that people would think that, someone like me should go ahead and respond to. But, like, especially that song, like, I can't tell you how inspirational that song has been for me. And I've felt it more than ever in the past year, being part of this fandom and part of this, our corner of it, you know, with the Slack group and with these streams where I've finally sort of, you know, put aside my fears and embraced who I am. And so I actually respond to that song, and I'm not going to be shy about how much I love that song and that movie. So yeah, that's another element of just like embrace what makes you feel, guys. That's all I can say. And don't be afraid to feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, and we're talking about really character driven and romance driven storylines. And if that isn't your thing, then, you know, be into movies and shows that aren't necessarily like that. And that's totally fine. I just think what we're kind of making the point here is that one is vilified and the other is not. It's actually elevated as better.
Because here's the thing, like, not everybody is into romance. That's just a fact. But I think that a lot, and not just romance, but things that sort of are, you know, emotional and, you know, and sort of ask you to be emotionally open while experiencing it. And I feel like there are a lot of people, particularly men, who do like that stuff, but they're just afraid to talk about it. And I hope that, you know, if this stream does anything, I want it to start planting the seeds in maybe some people's heads that they don't have to be shy about the things they like. That just start off by, you know, if you're shy about saying that you love something, you think you'll be embarrassed, start off by just telling your closest friend or a friend. Take those baby steps. That's what I had to do. I think it's really important, especially for men, to start opening themselves up and not be afraid of being judged for liking something that's more emotional or feminine, because that's kind of the whole thing with toxic masculinity, and we have to let go of that. I think if men weren't afraid to be more open with their emotions, then that would kind of be a very positive step forward in solving some of the problems that we're dealing with.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also everybody wins when so-called chick flicks are more esteemed, if you will. Like, Mean Girls is funny, but it also has a really good message, which is stop caring about what other people think. And that was a really impactful movie for me, J-Dubs, because I was just about to go into high school. And I needed that kind of wake-up call that all of this petty, cliquey stuff doesn't matter in the end. Once you graduate, it's done. It's over. And so, you know, teenagers, you probably remember this feeling. Everything is the end of the world. It's like life or death with things when you're a teenager. And what I love about Mean Girls, even though it's called like a chick flick, is that it kind of tells, you know, preteens and teens that, you know, just be yourself. And I think that was impactful for me because I was an anime geek and I hid that all throughout middle school. And it wasn't until I was in high school, after seeing stuff like Mean Girls, that I said, I'm just going to like what I like. And that's like exactly what this stream is about.
And I'm really excited because I'm about to see that for the first time, because
I forgot, you still haven't seen it. We are going to have
we're going to be doing a stream. Yeah. And which is going to be so much fun.
Yes, we are going to have our dear Kate on it's going to be right around her birthday, and we're going to have her on to talk about Mean Girls over at John Webster Film in January. I want to say it's January 16th. Does that sound right? I don't know. But we're Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on John Webster Film. So yeah, we are going to talk about Mean Girls next month. And we're also going to talk about X-Men, the first movie with Kelly, Jaded Redhead, and that has a lot of great female characters in it as well.
Yeah, I just checked. It is Mean Girls is on the 16th, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah,
and Legally Blonde is another one for me, reflective, that kind of, you know, was a girly movie that I you know, as a blonde, we're so discriminated against now. I'm just kidding. Dumb blonde jokes. I heard like every dumb blonde joke in the book, and I loved Legally Blonde because it just kind of flipped that stereotype on its head, and it was just really fun.
This is not a lie.
It's not wrong. This is not wrong.
But
I laid low and waited.
But see, this is also the thing. Like, I'm talking about all this progress that I've made. A blind spot that I still have is sort of more contemporary female-driven films that don't have an action element. So that's why I'm actually really happy that we're going to be watching it, because I do need to see more films of that kind. Even though, I've seen, and I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know if this is an accurate comparison, but in that same vein of sort of, a high school, teenage girls, a movie that I have seen and loved, which came out recently, was Booksmart, which also was one of my favorite movies of, the year that it came out. Oh my God, was that only last year? I'm just realizing it may have only been last year. Everybody, this year has been
it feels like
long.
70 years or 1 week. Like, it just doesn't. 2020 is so freaking extra.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It won't stop being insane, I'm sure.
It's almost over, though.
It is. We're don't know
through.
how much different 2021 is going to be, but I'll go in with hope and responsibility. And
yeah.
I'm going to be alone this holiday season. I'm a little sad. It's my first time not being with my parents, but and I want to use this ticker because it's really fun. I do want to say happy holidays and happy new year to everyone that's watching. And I hope everyone is safe and, if you do get to see people, that you're doing it responsibly. This has been a PSA from Amy Blackfire.
Yeah. And of course, as I said before, we will be having, it won't quite be on Christmas Day. It'll be the day after, but we're doing the Muppet Christmas Carol, which, is another musical. I love musicals. Have I said that?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
so come celebrate with us on John Webster Film. That'll be really fun.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm trying to think back further on what other sort of romantic movies, like, we talked about 2015 when Carol came out. Brooklyn also came out that year. Which is a movie that is unabashedly, about love and romance. Now, have you seen that one, Amy?
Which one is it again?
Brooklyn.
No, I have not.
Okay. Oh, that's a shame. We'll have to save the in-depth talk of that for another time. But, that movie is quite literally about, a woman who has to make a choice between,
happy birthday, Alicia. No, girl, feel free to trust me, AK. You can hijack my chat anytime you want. Happy birthday, Alicia. I hope that, all of us this year have a chill birthday because of what's going on, but I hope you have a wonderful day nonetheless.
But I was just going to say, Brooklyn is basically about a woman who has to make a choice between basically both two men, but also two ways of life, essentially, and they're kind of it's a choice between her new life and and the one that she's tempted to go back to. So it's all rooted in character, and and it's got an absolutely wonderful love story, and that was also one of my favorite films of that year. And going back to Kira, though, we just did a stream recently on Colette, which, is another one which, like, I don't think anybody would expect, me to love that unconditionally, but it's an absolutely beautiful film. I say anybody, like, people around here would expect me to, because it's a Keira Knightley movie, but otherwise,
and what I really like about Colette is it's about female talent, and it's about female authorship and female readership, and kind of the assumptions that is made. Are you guys ready for it? By the patriarchy about what an audience is male and what men would like. And it's also about something that's happened for centuries as well, which is men taking credit for women's work. It's very, very very common, unfortunately. And I think also I'm going to pop this back up here because also it's about a queer love story, which is just the best. And please, please watch our stream over on John Webster Film that we did with Jared about the Knights of Kira were all together to talk about it. And it just really, I just loved it because it took the love story that, you know, that anyone who, it's like kind of the common love story, but it wasn't common at all, right? Because it was in a time, and we still are in a time where this kind of, you know, a queerdom is seen as well, queer, strange, wrong. But it was even worse. This was the early 1900s. And so it's nice to just kind of have something that is, it's about them, right? It's about Colette and Missy.
And they get a happy ending.
Yeah.
With really no strings attached, which is beautiful. And, you know, the toxic, you know, male character played by Dominic West basically gets a middle finger. It's like, you know, which is great. And it has one of the all best, you know, tell him off scenes I think I've ever seen before. But going back to, you know, what you were talking about with the writing of the stories and the fact that, you know, who that's targeted towards, he actually says the line in the film, it's too feminine.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, which is what we're, the whole thing that we're talking about.
Exactly.
Like, why
and there's
is
also
that
the line where it says,
thing?
They're talking about the reception of the book, about you know, about the Claudine, this character that is based on Colette's childhood, and they go, "You'll never know who's reading it, young women." It's like, whoa.
Really? That's interesting.
That's interesting. It's just like, you know, yeah, and that's something that I do in my studies because I study 1800s and early 1900s science fiction. Literature in China, specifically literature that presents a future where women are more equal. And something that I always find interesting is when I read the prefaces, the author addresses the reader as gentlemen. This assumption of a male audience is, I think, actually still in play today when it comes to movies and how they're marketed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like to the point that they'll even misdirect the audience about like what the movie's about. The classic example of that is if you go back and look at all the advertisements for the Quentin Tarantino film Inglourious Bastards, that movie's main character is Shoshana, played by Melanie Laurent, and she barely appears in any of the promotional material. It's all Brad Pitt and the Bastards. And
they only take up maximum 30 minutes of screen time, all added all up. It's really about her and her revenge, and her, and you know, and it's just, that's, I think, really surprising in the way that, you know, PR, like just picturing people at the table, the PR team, like figuring things out. You know, they don't say maybe necessarily outright, we're doing this for a male audience, but they have in mind, in the back of their mind, subconsciously, they're thinking about the male audience and how to get them to the theaters.
Yeah, they need to trick the male audience, but there's no need in that movie because it's a Tarantino movie. Right? It's gonna be crazy. There's gonna be blood and, you know,
who doesn't
gunfire
want to see,
and,
you know, some Nazis getting scalped.
Yeah, it's like, why do you need to hide the fact that there's a female lead from the people going to see that movie? They see the name Tarantino, they're gonna go.
Yeah, and actually, please check out on John Webster Film. We did a 3-ish hour stream on Tarantino. We picked about 5 of his movies. And Inglourious Bastards was one of those. We also talked about, of course, Kill Bill, which has is all about one woman's revenge.
Yeah, it's like coming right, like Inglourious Bastards came right after Kill Bill. Why would you feel the need to hide a female lead from an audience who's just gone through Kill Bill?
Yeah,
I get that Brad Pitt is a superstar, and so you're gonna want to, you know, push him to a certain degree, but not to the point that you completely erase the main character from the promotional material.
yeah.
That just it just never made sense to me, except the fact that they felt they needed to play to the male potential male audience members.
And with Kill Bill, something I find interesting, other than the Orientalist aspects of it, and I don't mean that terribly pejoratively, just a little bit, but also, you know, there's Bill, who's this like kind of patriarchal male figure, and then you have the masters that she has. They're always men. She's kind of a part of a male martial lineage, and so I like that Tarantino didn't just have another dude looking for revenge. It is kind of a classic revenge tale, and it doesn't necessarily make it feminist by just having a woman there, but it's something, you know.
Yeah, Aaron, you're not wrong. Although it is much worse today than even 10 years ago. But
yeah, and when
that doesn't make you wrong.
When they have when they announced the all-female Ghostbusters, there was like men on the internet were like, the world is over. Like, no one said anything about, you know, like if they did a male Charlie's Angels, no one would say anything. Like, I'd like to see dudes in short shorts being like, oh, Charlie, that'd be hilarious, you know. But it's just, you know, no one bats an eye if it's an all male kind of leads, right? But then when it's all female leads, oh, they're pandering to this new PC culture. When no, we just are finally starting to get our due. In some representation, and representation doesn't automatically mean equality. That's not what I'm trying to say, but it is a step toward something, you know. And I don't want to get too into it, but there's also this idea of finally casting people of color being, you know, like the frickin' end of the world too, according to the internet. And it's just let people act and then judge for yourself, rather than blowing up at the fact that it's not exactly what you want.
Yeah, I think you look at sort of, for comparison, looking at Mad Max Fury Road, which the star of that movie is Charlize Theron, and they were pretty out in the open about that. Like, even in all the trailers, she clearly overshadows Max, which, you know, I think actually just made people really excited for it, because she, even from the previews, you know that she's going to be amazing in this.
Yeah.
But even then, like, this goes back to what I was talking about before, where that whole thing is within the trappings of a big action movie, and there is no more actiony action movie than Mad Max Fury Road, because it's the whole thing is like a thrill ride. But I love the fact that it was so acclaimed and was so successful, and you pretty much have, you know, a female lead for the entire thing, and it's one of the most iconic performances.
Yeah, and Danny, I'm glad Danny brought up Grease, because something I love that movie. I love musicals, but something I always kind of didn't like is that in the end, you know, dressing up in the like leather and everything, and kind of changing for a man to make a point. I've never quite cared for that ending. I mean, she looked hot, don't get me wrong, but I just I like Grease, but it is very problematic in very many ways. And it's also hard because you know, Zuko, that main character, we're supposed to like him, and yet he's just a jerk. Right? And so, like, why are we rooting for the jerk? I don't understand.
But again, that's like the
He
whole
doesn't grow. Like Zuko from Avatar Last Airbender, another guy named Zuko, grows. He is the jerk, but he grows, and we don't get that in Grease.
Well, that's the thing. Like, and if you wind back the clock to see sort of how much worse things were back then, there was a very clear notion of what a male lead should be in a movie.
Yeah.
And how they should act. Like they even show it in the film where, he sees her again and he's like, oh, Sandy. And then the other guys show up and he's like, hey, baby, and all that. Like that's it right there. That's this fear of being open and intimate with, something or someone. So, yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of these love stories is about, and I mean, I think Pride and Prejudice does it well, but it can be done poorly, is about the woman getting the man to open up. Is kind of a big trope, I think.
Yeah, but what I really like, what I like a lot about Pride and Prejudice and the character of Darcy as well, and there's different ways you can play Darcy. I really like the way Matthew McFadden does it, which is that he does have a lot of sort of pride as well as social awkwardness. But you can tell, like from the first moments he's on screen, that he absolutely has fallen in love with Elizabeth, like immediately, and it's just sort of the road to get him there and to overcome certain obstacles that he's put in his own way.
Yeah.
And I like that he learns along the way, that this is not the way one should act if you're wanting to, sort of open up to people. And
and another great example is Big Bang Theory. I'm not sure. Have you seen it, John?
I have.
And it's problematic also in the race as well is very problematic in that. But let me tell you right now, chat, have you noticed Penny has no last name? Google it right now. It's just Penny. Until she marries Leonard. It's like freaking patriarchy. What the heck? Why don't we get a last name? She's the main character. She's in every season. And we have this. It's also what I first liked about the show was that it was kind of making geek cool. But no, it was making white male geeks cool. That's not the same thing as, my lovely ladies in the chat that are also geeks. It really didn't have a place for us. You had Amy Farrah Fowler. Yay, another Amy. But she was controlled by Sheldon. He controlled her by withholding sex. And that's a trigger for me, ladies, because I had an ex that was like that. So, Big Bang Theory has its virtues, and I'm glad that it made geek culture cool in a lot of ways. But it was not great as in a lot of other ways.
I think those things would probably be more obvious to me if I went back to rewatch it. I actually haven't seen it since it went off the air, so. But yeah, I can definitely see a lot of that.
But that's just one example. I'm not here. This is not riff on stuff. It is about what we like. But if you notice, the title says gender stereotypes in media consumption, right? This is the stuff that we consume and why we consume it. You can hate consume things. I've seen a lot of things because people said they didn't like it. So I watched it to see if I'd like it or not. And oftentimes the characters that I like and the stories that I like is driven by what other people have told me is good and bad. And a lot of that is infused with gender and gender stereotypes.
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere now. I mean, look, like we're not going to get into a whole drawn out Star Wars conversation, but just look at the reception going all the way back to The Force Awakens of the character of Rey, who, I'm just going to put it out there. Like, I love Rey with all my heart. But like, even with The Force Awakens, which at the time, a lot of people were happy with the movie, but even then you saw lots of complaints about, her character and, her getting flack for doing stuff that if any male character, Luke, had done, they wouldn't bat an eye at it. So yeah, it just has its roots everywhere, especially nowadays.
But I mean, we can always go back to our queen, though. Can we just talk about her just a little bit more, chat? I apologize, but you knew what you were getting into, me and John on a stream about gender. Come on, we were going to talk about more about Kira.
Yeah,
what I find interesting, John, is the difference between how Kira's character, how she ends up in The Duchess versus Anna Karenina, I can never say it right, versus Colette, right? She gets different endings, and that's why I love these. They're kind of bookends. Like, I suggest you watch Colette the Duchess and Anna Karenina, and then just kind of think of one is completely doesn't get what she wants, one is kind of in the middle, and then the other is gets what she wants. And just kind of ask yourself what that means for the story, the time period, and for Kira's character overall. I just find that fascinating.
Yeah, like, I think we're past the spoiler point on Anna Karenina, right? I mean, it's an old enough book that we can say the character dies at the end. She commits suicide. I'll just come right out. Sorry for all those of you who don't know the story, but the book's been out for a really long time.
That one also has some great class commentary. I know a couple of you in the chat said that you liked in Titanic the class commentary. Anna definitely has a lot of that.
Yeah, so like obviously we consider the one where she commits suicide at the end, the darkest, and the one where she really doesn't get what she wants, and that's the one where she makes the choice that Georgiana and the Duchess doesn't, which is to hell or high water, I'm going for the life that I want. And even to the point of initially giving up seeing her son, which I think she later comes to regret, but she sort of sticks to her decision. And so because of society, because of she's not allowed to see her son, she's treated with nasty looks wherever she goes, she's ostracized, and then she comes to feel like the love of her life is isn't being faithful to her, and all this stuff, this guy that she's literally given everything up for, and so she feels driven to the decision that she is. The Duchess, we can say it's kind of the middle of the road, but that's only because of what society kind of imposed on her. Like, she has to stay with a husband who has treated her like garbage and has raped her, and living with his mistress.
Yeah,
and his mistress's children.
Friend. I mean, you can't get more like kind of country music song.
Yeah, and so she has to live with that. That's maybe by back then standards, that's and she also has to give up her child as well that she has with another man. So she gets nothing. She has to continue to live this horrible life, but because the Duke says, I'm going to try and be better from now on. Like, that's the relief in the story, that maybe things won't be quite as hard for her now. Whereas Colette, she gives the middle finger to her asshole husband, and and she's free to go with the woman she loves, as well as she actually gets to claim the right to her work and becomes a very successful author in her own right. I feel like
I'm sorry to interrupt. I do just want to say, technically the man she loves, since Missy is trans, I would say.
Yes, I apologize. Sorry.
It is, although historically, actually, it's a little up in the air, but in the movie they basically made him trans.
I do want to say I sometimes get tripped up on this just because the person playing Missy is a cisgender woman, so I tend to say her because I'm thinking about the actress when I should be referring to the character. So I want to apologize for that. But yes, so they get to have their life together, and it's a very positive ending. And I feel like it's almost like these movies are, are telling like different sides of not the same story, but they're great companion pieces in the way that they evaluate sort of how a woman goes up against, the
Up against
patriarchy
what,
and
John?
the patriarchy
Yeah, he said it.
and how they're able to deal and cope with that and how successful they are in rebelling against it. So I really, we recommend seeing all of Keira Knightley's movies, but especially like for seeing that sort of evolution, check out those films because they're
Yes, so
really,
that's
really great.
Colette the Duchess and Anna Karenina. Those, I think, are like you said, John, companion movies. They really just go together. And I think that, having seen all of those films, I think it does show kind of, it really does center around the hurt that women have historically and continue to have to endure. And for you then as a cis straight guy to connect with that, I think is just wonderful. And that's why I'm so glad we're talking about this, because I think that these movies, although some would relate to them more, these movies are for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't even know if I should say this, but I guess because it's part of the conversation and just shows probably how hesitant I am as a cisgender, straight white guy to embrace sort of my love of these things. I have actually taken the time to consider whether I was in fact cisgender or whether I might actually be non-binary. I opened myself up to that sort of thought. I'm not. It seems clear to me, but I had considered that. But I think the reason why I did that is because as a sort of, again, as a cisgender, straight white man, like I'm afraid of, part of me is still afraid of being open about this. Like you almost wonder if, is there an easier way for me to explain that I like this stuff? And then the truth is that no, this is just what I like. And, and there is no, secret key that's going to unlock why that is. It just goes to show that we need to talk about this, and men need to be open to realizing that this is an aspect of them that that they should feel comfortable embracing, and it's the fact that we don't that is a problem.
And there's a really great conversation going on in the chat about this trope of the woman committing suicide. You're definitely onto something reflective, and I do Chinese lit, and there's a very common trope of a woman who is a widow or her husband is away or something, and she is about to be sexually abused by someone, and she commits suicide rather than be raped, and that was kind of a trend of keeping yourself pure. So that's a very common trend in literature, which is inherently patriarchal, and I think that's also kind of interesting, as you don't ever see, I can't think of an example in media or literature of a man committing suicide to protect his reputation necessarily.
Yeah,
I do know there's real life examples. There's an example of a Japanese man who was his wife was murdered, and he committed suicide and left in the suicide note, "I'm innocent, don't take this as guilt, I can't live with people thinking I did this." And then later they found when DNA technology got better, because I believe this was in the 80s, when DNA technology got better, they found that it was just a random intruder who came in and killed his wife, and he was indeed innocent. So there are real life examples of men protecting their reputation by committing suicide, but it is definitely a gendered as far as a feminine trope.
Yeah.
But sorry, that was a total sidebar.
No, I think it's very relevant. Yeah.
Yeah. But that is Anyways, but yes, please do watch Anna Karenina. I can never do that. Watch the Anna movie. And yeah, it's based on Russian literature, right? So it's
and we should say like
tragic.
it's a very stylistic film because it's a large portion of the film takes place on basically theater stages. Except when they leave the Russian court, and then they shoot on real locations, and it's a way of examining the different classes and stuff. And I think that's just amazing. I love seeing the way they rearrange all the sets and stuff in between scenes. Like that for me is what makes what makes that movie cool. I mean, we've been talking about like character and substance over style, but sometimes the style is really cool. Yeah.
It actually, that took a while to grow on me. The first time I saw it, I wasn't super into it. And then when I watched it the second time, I realized their use of space was phenomenal. To even though you have the more traditional different sets, to intentionally do what they did with this limited space, like a play, I think it was really cool. But yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Kolnitsky is Russian, so I'm sorry, I can't. I'm sorry, bro. Give me something in Chinese and I got you, but otherwise I'm kind of useless when it comes to pronunciation. But I will say though, too, just kind of going back to when I was talking about being kind of growing up, being a little tomboyish and everything. I would have my friends over, and we would watch Dragon Ball Z together, right? And those were like the kinds of things that I would watch with my friends, and then the more girly stuff I would watch by myself. So there is definitely, I think, shame sounds like it's a strong word, but I think it works here. There is a degree of shame that is put on people for certain things, right? And you were talking about publicly you could go and watch an action movie and not have to worry about that, but then had to kind of pump yourself up for going to see The Duchess by yourself.
Yeah, and going back to Pride and Prejudice, when I bought that on video, which of course I did immediately.
Physical media.
I didn't watch it when my dad was home. Because like, how am I, my thought was, how am I going to explain to my dad that I'm watching a Jane Austen romance? And then when it came out on Blu-ray, like it came in the mail, and my mom and I both wanted to, well, she doesn't care as much about like, high definition versus standard definition as I do, but she's always up for watching it. And I wanted to watch, the movie and see how great it looked. So what I told my dad was that, mom really wants to watch this movie, which sucks. I shouldn't have had to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't do that anymore. So yeah, it's just one of those things that's sort of been a journey, and now I tend not to be shy about what I like, and it's much easier and makes for a much happier experience as a movie lover.
So we've been talking a lot about us, but I'm really curious, anyone in the chat, don't feel obligated, but if you kind of want to offer a personal experience, please feel free. I really want to. I'm going to try and actually keep this to 2 hours, J-Dubs, unlike Joa, where we just keep going. But yeah, so I
don't know what you're talking about.
These last few minutes, if the chat has anything they like to share, they've been great about sharing their opinions on, the type of media and everything. But maybe they, Anna's been talking about otaku means someone who likes anime, right? So I had a couple of friends that I watched anime with, but she kind of had this experience of having to consume that particular media on her own, it seems from her comment, because there were not other people that liked it. And so, I know you really liked Lord of the Rings. Were you able to share that with people, or is this a more recent thing for you, J-Dubs?
Oh, Lord of the Rings. No, I was not shy about Lord of the Rings.
But did you have friends that you talked about it with and such?
Not in the way that I do now. Most of the people I had conversations with about Lord of the Rings were online, but there were also people in school who at least saw the films. So I was able to have conversations, and I actually had a pretty good relationship with my television production teacher, who also taught my science fiction class. Yes, everybody, I had a science fiction class. I apologize that you didn't. But and he was very much a Tolkien fan, so so I would have conversations with him about that, and I edited, like in the TV production class, I did a lot of editing of stuff involving Lord of the Rings, so I was talking to people about it.
Nice.
But it wasn't to the degree that I have now, especially since I've gotten to talk to people like, you know, Helen, the clueless fangirl, and Dan, who does voice of geekdom, and like now I actually get to interact with people who are as big Tolkien fans as I am, and as well as I have to mention the people who have been very generous to come on to John Webster Film, from Cliff Broadway of theonering.net, and Doug Adams, who wrote the book, The Music of the Lord of the Rings films, and was actually involved in certain elements of the production of those films. So yeah, this is the one where I plug. If you haven't heard that interview, go check it out over on John Webster Film. But like that kind of stuff was like a pipe dream, to actually be talking with people who are both involved, you know, in the actual films, people who've been, you know, like covering websites, you know, devoted to the films, to just, you know, all out Lord of the Rings geeks, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a whole new world, and which is why I'm glad I've gotten to expand that to my geekiness about other things, like you, me, and Jared, as well as other people like, you know, Kate, and, you know, other people in our group. We've formed our own official, you know, Kira Knightley fan group, the Knights of Kira. Check us out, follow us.
Also on
like,
Insta.
Yeah, like that is so great.
We've gotten to know other people that run other Instagram fan nights, you know, Kira Knightley fan accounts. It's just been amazing to find a community, and a lot of people are talking in the chat about, you know, how the internet was, you know, the internet can be a dark and terrible place, but it can also be a place for people to come together and form a community.
Well, which is why our Slack group means so much to me, because it's like, even if Twitter occasionally gets out of hand, we have like, it's our own private community where we get to just hang out and log on in the morning, say good morning, and, you know, and just talk about like whatever's going on. And then we, of course, we have our never-ending Zooms, which, you know, those are great.
I think that something that I really appreciate about community and about having people around you that like the same thing you do is you don't have to make the excuses, stuff that we've been talking about, for having to say that, oh, I like this because people know why, because they also like it. And you might like it for different reasons. Like I like to talk to people who like the magical elements of A Song of Ice and Fire, because I like it for the political intrigue. So it's kind of fun to see the reasons, but you don't have that, you know, that certain people like the same thing, but you don't feel like you have to basically say, oh no, I'm not wasting my time, this thing is a really good thing, right? People just know when you're in a similar fan group. So, you know, I never have to explain to you why Kira is amazing, because you totally get it. So, you know, it's great to be welcomed like that. And it also kind of validates me, and you know, I've made lifelong friendships from this fandom and other fandoms.
Yeah, I will just say, like, I've never like I've never had quite a sort of emotional reaction quite like when, you know, we were setting up the Slack group, and I, like, as a joke, started up a channel that was just going to be me going on about Kira and her movies. It was seriously a joke. That's all it was. And then you joined up and you were like, oh, I also love Kira. This is great. And like, that was when, because Jared and I had also talked about, our shared love of those movies. But once I realized that we were starting to form like a group of people who really loved her movies, it stopped being like this jokey thing. And it was like, we actually have our own little fan group now.
Yeah.
I can go on about this stuff that somebody who actually, won't just shake their head at me, who gets it, and
and once again, the links are down in the description for the Unspun Yarn and Here Be Dragons, but also you guys really need to check out John Webster Film. That's also down in the description. Yeah. John and I have guests on Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. We have a ball talking about movies. We've started this new series called Focus On, where we focus on a director, actor, costume designer. We've done, obviously, Focus on Keira Knightley. And we also just did the Tarantino one. And we have a lot more planned for you. It's hard to do those because we have to watch so many films. So those are going to be like twice, maybe a year, maybe 3 a year. But no more than that, because it really does take a lot of our time. We appreciate doing that.
We learned the hard way when we went through a week of binging all those Tarantino movies. We were like, oh, this takes a lot.
Films, very great, but very long. And also, we have a couple of, on John Webster Film, we also have a couple of series also planned for 2021. So there's a lot more great movie content. But do you have any final thoughts for us, J-Dubs?
I just really want to make one final plea, and I hope those of you who are watching, I normally am not so blatant about this, but I would say please spread this video as far and wide as you possibly can, because I feel like this is something that needs to be talked about, and I want people to sort of hear this plea of don't just stick with what you're told you should like.
This is another one. Reflective is also talking about liking something that seems too young for you, right? Like, just we should be able to like what we like.
Yeah, I went through a period of rediscovering Disney movies when my parents were going through a separation, which thankfully they got back together not too long after, but it was kind of a depressing time, and I rediscovered Disney movies at that point and realized, no, you're never too old for this stuff. But I will just say again, like, please don't be intimidated by what people are telling you should like. Like, if you respond to something, like, go after that, embrace it. And, if it takes baby steps of like, telling one other person that you like this thing that people might give you a look for liking, please, take those steps. Just don't shy away from it. I had to go on a journey of, not being shy about loving a whole host of movies. But like, it's so rewarding when you are into the stuff that you're into, and B, when you don't have to be shy about it.
Yeah, and I also hate watch some movies. There are some movies that Shark Boy and Lava Girl is objectively a bad movie, but I really like it. That it's you kind of do what you got to do, and I think also, like with normalizing geek culture, we can also normalize, bronies have started this important work of all people, of normalizing men liking what they like and not and really just going all in. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think that's really great.
I think there's no like overstating how much of a positive impact it would have for men to no longer, particularly straight men, because we're the ones who are afraid of being emotional. I think the positive effect that would be had from us no longer feeling like we can't show our emotions. we could just break that barrier. And I mean, I think you can see the ripple effect that would have throughout society.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I really hope that even if there's just one person who sees this and takes it to heart and says, you know what, I do get misty-eyed when I watch a period romance or something like
Yeah.
that, and I'm gonna tell somebody, and I'm not gonna be shy about it. Like if I can get one person who walks away from this stream with that kind of response, or if it's a girl who has been shy about liking an all-out action movie, same thing, uh, then it'll be a resounding success, I think. Yeah, I also wanted to. There were some things I had off to the side. We didn't really get to talk about them, but like I just want to mention these because I also love to use streams to just give advertising to people who don't need it. And like if you're a Star Wars fan, I highly recommend E.K. Johnston's Padme novels. Like I think Padme is a horribly underserved character in the Star Wars series once again because I think because she's a girl unfortunately and she is the protagonist of the Phantom Menace. Like she's the main character of the very start of the series, so like she should get more love. So check out those books, and Nessie and I are going to be talking on the Unspun Yarn about Arthurian legend, so it behooves me to also recommend The Mists of Avalon, which is a female-driven take on the Arthurian legend, and I think it's one of the best. I loved it. It's a big, big book, but it's so worth it. I mean, I don't know about you, Amy, but I love books where you get to just immerse yourselves in a world, and that's one that feels like it's this big, epic story that you just get to, just be a part of for a while. It's when books are short, it's like, why'd you even bother me?
Books with female protagonists, you say, here is my every single video. I plug this and I'm going to keep doing it. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. It's, it's got kind of it kind of goes into a little bit of the chosen one and that you follow kind of a character that does turn out to be extraordinary. But Reen, the main character, she is amazing. And I think that, and Kuang has a lot of, a gender kind of commentary in there, and it's a really great series, and I can't plug it more. Yes, Leaf, I'm so glad you asked. There are excellent mugs at Sanrixian's Threadless. Thank you for posting that link. Everyone, please check out Sanrixian stuff while we're doing the plugs. But yeah, we could honestly keep talking about this forever, but I'm just going to go ahead and finish up with plugging our things again. We've got December 30th. Once again, Nessie, the Unspun Yarn, deserves your subscription. Like, what are you doing with your life? She is amazing. And December 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be there co-hosting our second episode of BLEEP the Patriarchy. The first episode was called VEEP the Patriarchy, where we talked about the first female vice president. But yeah, we're going to be talking about on the December 30th episode, 3 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be talking about transphobia and turfism. And we're going to have Ian Thomas Malone and Lo the Links on. Lo the Links has been on my channel twice, and they are definitely going to keep coming back on my channel. So all of you A Song of Ice and Fire fans, I just put out 2 videos. One talking to Rohan about Cersei, and the second one is talking to Lo about Lyson Omar. Please check those out. I worked hard on those essays, and the guests I had on were amazing. And like I said, my friend Yogi over at Through the Moon Door, December 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern, he is going to have on No Effin' Aegon, who I'm sure you might have seen from Twitter if you are, or in live chats if you're in the Song of Ice and Fire fandom, and they're going to talk about so-called crackpot theories in the fandom. So that's going to be very fun. And yes, our Lo is awesome. They have opened my mind to so many things, and their analysis, they have a WordPress called Queer Musings. So please search Lo the Links, And they also have if you go to their Twitter, they have a link to their Ko-fi account where you can do a one-time contribution to them, basically like sending them money through PayPal. And they seriously deserve that. I gave Flo like $10 a couple of weeks ago, and they were so over the moon happy. And I was like, you deserve it. It's like, I should have done this earlier. So they write a lot. They do His Dark Materials and A Song of Ice and Fire and more. They do some nice queer, feminist, trans analysis. And it's really amazing stuff. Please check out Lo. So if you go to my channel and you look at my latest video, other than this one, obviously, you will find all of those links, and they seriously deserve your attention. John, what are we doing on John Webster Film, and what do you want to plug that we've already done, maybe that we haven't mentioned?
Well, I've just realized that we've actually mentioned all the stuff that we're doing over the next month at different times. So I thought maybe I would go ahead and just lay it all out for people. Let me pull it up. Next week, once again, we're returning to 7 p.m. Eastern. This is on Saturday. We're going to be talking about the Muppet Christmas Carol. We might have a guest for that. I don't want to say for sure yet, but you'll see that announcement on Twitter. Then the week after that, January 2nd, we're going to be talking about Wonder Woman 1984. And I do believe we're going to have Helen the Clueless Fangirl on for that. And also the week after that, we'll be doing another Knights of Kira stream with Jared on A Dangerous Method. Then coming up on...
I can't not put it up every time we mention the KOK.
Yeah, then coming up on January 16th, we'll be doing a stream on Mean Girls with Kate, which is going to be a blast. Never seen the movie before, really looking forward to it. And then on January 23rd, we're covering the first X-Men film with Kelly, which, is just to be a bunch of X-Men fans nerding
We're
out.
just going to be throwing up nerddom straight into your face, because Kelly and I both grew up reading the comics, and John and Kelly and I are all fans of the original animated. We're going to have a great time. It's going to be amazing. And we're going to talk about how depowering Rogue was a bad call. Anyways, we'll get into that. Lots of X-Men hot takes coming at you.
And then finally on January 30th, we'll be doing a stream on Pan's Labyrinth with our friend and my Here Be Dragons co-host, Steven Stark, as well as Cecilia from... Deetsterilia. I was afraid I was going to mispronounce it, but thank you.
Oh my God, yeah. I didn't even realize this. There we go.
Yeah, I just typed this up. Like, follow the Knights of Kira everywhere we're at. We have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Tumblr. So please go ahead, and we'll leave that up for a second, because I know all of you want to jot that down. Like, follow us on that.
After seeing this stream, you want to join in on this Kira love.
Yeah.
And something I'm really, really excited for all we're going to talk about, but I am especially excited to finally be on a stream because we did have Cecilia on for Fellowship of the Ring, but I'm excited to have a native Spanish speaker on to talk about Pan's Labyrinth, because, it's, I do need the subtitles. I do actually understand Spanish pretty well because I took it for 6 years. But it's nice to have someone that is, can... yay, Reflective is definitely going to be in the chat for that, looks like.
Excellent.
But yes, and yes, this is our official symbol, the Knights of Kira, the crossed swords. We defend our queen. But yes, so seriously, some great stuff. We're also are tentatively planning for February and March and over at John Webster Film. And no matter what movies you like, we will talk about them eventually. So please give John Webster Film a sub, because and if you want to do like a lot of people in the Slack, then if you haven't seen a movie and you've heard us on the stream say we're going to do it, watch it in time for the stream. And then you can talk about it in the chat. If you're like me and don't care about content previews, what some of you call spoilers, then you can also just be in the chat and watch us anyway, talk about a film and see if you want to watch it. But we do a lot of great things. And please do, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, we did 3 streams, 1 on each movie. And that Doug Adams interview that John did about all about the music,
which was just 3 hours of me geeking out with Doug about all the music in those films, and believe me, it was the easiest job I've ever had, because he was just an amazing interview. He's incredible. So please check that out. I was really proud of that. So, and yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I just want to do one more time this amazing thank you for being for the first ever episode, John, on my first ever episode of Buddy Banter. Thank you for being my buddy and bantering with me, John.
Thank you for inviting me on. This was a treat because I feel like all of our streams over on Joe Wolf, as you've dubbed us, are always, you know, there's a certain structure to it, and this got to be a looser conversation, which I was really happy about.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone in the chat. You seriously make these live streams worth it. And I thank you all for being so active. And, you know, those of you that are watching later, hopefully you'll catch us live next time. And please, I can never get this right. That little icon in the bottom right of your screen has me looking like this. And that will subscribe you to my channel, and you can hit that little bell to know when I upload videos.
Subscribe and share this video as much as you can, please.
Yes, please
and,
share.
Yeah.
I always appreciate your comments, likes, and please follow me on Twitter, because if you have great comments on my polls, sometimes I shout you out in my videos. So be a part of the Amy Blackfire channel via Twitter. So once again, John, thank you so much again for being my buddy and bantering with me. We will see you next time, everyone.